What's going on, Laughlin nerds? Beefy here, and today we're going to take a comprehensive look at ground references for the Honcho 13R right pattern. Off the bat, we'll briefly cover some parameters you should use while moseying about the pattern, then get the plane moving to show you ground references for entry, driving up initial, and going into the break. I'll do my best to keep things real time, but I'll occasionally be pulling the air brake so you can get a better look at a couple of the references, and then do a real-time run-through at the end without all the narration. I'll point out a couple of common student errors here and there that you should make a note of to prevent your gradebook's untimely demise. As your courtesy disclaimer, we are at Laughlin Air Force Base right now, if the name of the channel wasn't a complete giveaway, so any informational overlap between bases found herein should be treated as circumstantial. Always reference your local pubs. Similarly, the specific procedures mentioned in this video are for the T6 Alpha only, and the boys in legal say we cannot recommend you attempt them in any other airplane. If you're watching these videos because of an interest in military aviation, welcome! Please don't fly anywhere near these references in civilian aircraft. We are jam-packed with student pilots who are not experienced enough to have a sense of self-preservation, and we would prefer everyone's airplanes maintain general structural integrity. So, where the heck in the world are we? If you look at about your 1 o'clock, you should see Laughlin out there. If you look from left to right across the nose, you should see a pair of small roads running from southeast to northwest. Just adjacent to these two roads is a pair of ponds that look like tadpoles. Unfortunately, the color washout from the camera makes them a little hard to see, but in the airplane it'll be more visible. Abeam the ponds and in between those roads is the point of Rio. When you overfly this point, you should be at 200 knots and 3,100 feet using an appropriate power setting in the ballpark of about 50% torque plus your altitude. You can technically be as low as 2,100 feet MSL, but that's not great single-engine mentality, and I wouldn't recommend it unless you're trying to avoid clouds in order to maintain VFR.
Double 67 Rio.
As you cross over the top of Rio, you can initially turn to a heading of 295, and then get your eyes outside again and look towards the horizon. You should see several dirt roads from the north, south, and east that converge to a single point. That point is the ranch. As you can see, it's not quite visible yet, but I'll highlight it when we get closer. Be sure to wind correct that heading and track towards the ranch so you don't get blown too close to VFR entry.
From the Rio, welcome back. We're 1-3 unrestricted. Birds low. You'll be number 6.
About halfway to the ranch, if you look to the right, you'll see a tadpole-looking pond roughly shaped like a hook. This is Hook Pond, which is often mistaken for VFR entry. Don't do that. Now, this will be a little clearer as you get closer, but you might just be able to make out a couple of dirt roads converging on a central dark spot just to the right of the nose. That dark spot is the ranch. As you approach the ranch, you can look to the right and see the actual VFR entry, which is distinctly different from the Hook Pond in a few ways, the most obvious being shape, and not having a small creek that empties into it. From the ranch, look to the right and identify the east to west running highway that tracks into the greater part of Del Rio. Just before this road enters the city, you should see a large rectangular building with a white roof just left of the highway. This building is known as the school, mostly because it's a school. You should be able to see it right there. Some other obvious visual references include the water tower, which you can see just to the right of the school there, and the football stadium, which you'll offset to the left of in about 3 miles. Reaching the school, you can descend to pattern altitude, 2,100 feet MSL. A common technique for descents is to set 20% and pitch your nose to maintain 200 knots, which you'll find to be about 5 degrees nose low. As you pass the school, work the nose about 10 degrees right and look for the curved highway on the inside edge of Del Rio here. This highway makes up the left leg of the H field, which is your next turn point. The other roads which make up the right side and middle of the H will come into view shortly, and generally speaking, this is how it will go in real life. Your goal is to overfly the middle of the H. Don't forget to level off, by the way. And we'll pause for a second here so you can see the curved roads that make up the left leg and the right leg, and the smaller road that makes up the center of the H. So you're not going to turn when you're directly over that road, but if you look to the right, you'll see the two angled roads that make up the shape known as the hockey stick. You'll want to turn just past the middle of the H in order to parallel the shaft of the hockey stick. The highlighted roads here form the A field. The very base of the A field is a small dirt road that points at Laughlin. If you're having trouble seeing this road at this point, you can continue to parallel the hockey stick by tracking to the left of the small round field, and it should come into view as you get closer. Turning to fly up this road will put you on a 45 to initial ground track. As you're about to make these next set of turns, it's probably a good idea to clear aggressively to the left for traffic to the center runway. Now, unfortunately, you can't see it because of the canopy bow, but if you were to look at runway 13 right, you would see a small dirt road that has power lines over the top of it pointing at the approach end. Turn to align yourself with this road, and you've intercepted initial ground track. When you roll out, call radar initial. And at this point, you can see the road that points to the approach end of 13 right a little better.
Level 67 radar initial.
From here, you can see the north-south road where those power lines terminate. Around the road bend in Highway 377 here is Bronco Tower, which will become a little more clear as we get closer. Call initial somewhere between the north-south road and Bronco Tower. After calling initial, zig or zag as required to point yourself at the approach end of 13 right.
Level 67 initial.
The brake zone is the first 3,000 feet of the runway, so pick a point somewhere between this last white tank here and this large traffic circle and give her, as long as you're clear of conflicts. The self-clearancing properties of the propeller should not be ops tested on daily sorties.
Level 67 brake.
As you go into the brake, you can use some ground references to ensure that your spacing is relatively close to what it should be. Here you can see the traffic circle, which works pretty well for a normal pattern with flaps in the takeoff position. This road highlighted here is about the widest you should ever be on inside downwind. Way out there off the nose you can see Bronco Tower again, which will also work similar to the traffic circle. Remember to use your wingtip references to the max extent possible. These ground references may work on a standard 10-knot headwind day, but wingtip references help you develop a skill that's usable outside of the context of Laughlin Air Force Base. The primary perch point for a standard 10-knot headwind day should be when the approach end of the runway is quartered 45 degrees off your inside shoulder. However, if you look just inside the canopy bow, you'll see that the 85th was kind enough to wedge a squadron insignia just inside of Highway 90. If you're not in a safe position to perch by the time you're abeam that little guy, you should break out and try again. And that just about covers all the ground references from Rio to the runway. Now we're going to go back and play the whole thing again in real time, sans all the narration, so you can get a slightly better feel for the pacing and radio calls you'll hear out there.
Devil 67 base gear. Devil 67 Rio.
From the Rio, welcome back. We're 1-3 unrestricted. Birds low. You'll be number 6.
Devil 67 radar initial. Devil 67 initial. Devil 67 break. Devil 67 base gear.